Welcome back. There is a growing battle over data centers, and it's creating new division inside the Texas Republican Party. A new report from the Texas Tribune looks at how massive AI-driven developments are sparking pushback in rural communities where people have concerns about water, power, and local control. Taylor Goldenstein is the reporter behind this story. She's here to talk with us more about it. Taylor, thanks for your time.
Of course, thanks for having me.
You know, specifically in these rural communities, what is the major concern out there about these data centers?
Right. The main thing that we're hearing on these data centers is concern about water availability, concern about power capacity, and kind of everything that goes along with that, whether there will be enough water for, residents and all their needs, livestock and all their needs, when we know that water and power are already kind of pressing issues, definitely pressing issues in the state.
You know, we've seen this conversation pop up about what cities can do when it comes to data centers trying to come to town versus what counties can do. And in rural parts of Texas, we know that local control is really, really important to people out there. Talk to me about that piece of their concern.
Right. And that's a big part of this discussion is that essentially cities have what is called zoning power, where they have some kind of say over what developments come in because they decide what kinds of things can be zoned for different areas, an industrial area versus residential. Counties don't have that in Texas. And so we're hearing this kind of bigger push from the local governments to have more say over whether they allow these data centers in. And, whether that be a law from the ledge or, how that actually shows up in the future, we'll see. But that's what they're pushing for.
When you think about what's happening within the Republican Party, there's two real thoughts, right, about data centers and allowing data centers en masse to come into Texas. I feel like it's largely rural Republican versus urban Republican. But you tell me, what did you find out in your reporting?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's pretty spot on. I don't want to say that as an absolute because, like I mentioned in the story, a lot of the folks are just being quiet on the issue. Maybe they're thinking still, considering where they stand on this. So, of the ones that have spoken out, it does tend to be more rural lawmakers who are speaking out against, or not necessarily even against, but sharing more of their concerns as opposed to the urban lawmakers.
Tell me about the divide that it's creating within the party.
Yeah, well, the story talks about how, we looked at, all the planned data center developments that we could find, and 60% of them are in rural areas. So it makes sense that we're hearing more from the rural lawmakers. And so they've got that pressure, but then they've also got the White House. President Trump has been very enthusiastic about this. Governor Abbott is a little bit harder to pin down, but his public statements about developments in Texas have been very positive. And so on the other hand, they have all this pressure going the other way towards data centers. And there's a big lobby, which the story discusses as well. There's a lot of money pouring in at this time. So they're kind of caught between constituents and the standard bearers in their party.
Yeah, obviously right now we have some special interim committees that are looking at data centers. What are some of the issues that they're looking at and focusing on?
Right. We've had a few of those, and the discussions have centered on power. So far, there's an entire process going on right now with the data centers that are applying to become part of the grid or connect to the grid. That is very competitive and made even more complicated by companies that are kind of trying it out and not 100% sure if they'll actually come here. So that's been a big topic of concern. And even when it's not on the agenda, water has always been something that lawmakers and the public is pushing for the ledge to think about as well.
Yeah, that crucial natural resource. Reporter Taylor Goldenstein with the Texas Tribune, we thank you so much for taking some time out to talk with us.
Of course, thank you for having me.